And if I just want to quote, I can quote Prime Minister, so the late Prime Minister William Gladstone. He's the Prime Minister in 1894 when the Islamic Khilafah was on its last leg. And he said that the situation in the East will not be successful until we remove the hijab from the woman and use it to cover the Quran. And this kind of leads into the next kind of segment of the whole breakdown of public modesty, which is connected to individualism, right? Because all these colonialists basically told the Muslim woman, hey, you don't have to wear that, you don't have to be covered up, right? And that is really, it's more or less been successful in our societies. I mean, it's one thing where one acknowledges that they're struggling in keeping up with the commandments of the Creator. That's one thing. But justifying, it's not necessary, for example, to conform to parts of the hijab. Hijab is just coined for to have modest attitude and modest attire as per the rules of the Creator. So there are many who justify saying, it's not necessary. And you'd probably come across people like that as well. If you want to comment on that.
Actually brings me back to my university days. I was at Wilfrid Laurier. And alhamdulillah, I was MSA president. And at that time, they had a very active Islamic studies department. And I was always, I was like, mashallah, Islamic studies is great. Unfortunately, the reading, especially with women's issues, there's actually a paradigm, a feminist reading of things. And really it's just to, I remember one of the things was like, the people explain the Qur'an, the mufassirun, they had a show, basically, a male dominant reading of the Qur'an. So therefore we need a feminine reading of the Qur'an. So as if these ulama, they were basically their chauvinism, a'udhu billah, basically, made them make these opinions from themselves. And really this is an argument, that ultimately, relies on people's ignorance. As an ummah, alhamdulillah, one of the key things is that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected this book and also protected language that basically explains this book. And a lot of times, we find that, one of the things is that, these opinions of, we need another rereading. It comes from people who will not, unfortunately. Or
actually, the word khimar does not mean head covering. It just means cover.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean a headscarf, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, what it is there's going to be a rereading of this text without any influence from, male dominant views and things like that, which is actually a very offensive thing. Because actually, one of the greatest scholars of hadith was the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, Aisha, which is the third most person who narrated a hadith. And there's been many great women scholars in Islamic history. So, they didn't have a feminist reading or things like that. So I think that, again, we find this, it's actually, these caricatures, for an abusive, man who's forcing his wife and doing this and that. Actually, one thing they find difficult to deal with, is a strong Muslim woman who wears the hijab, is proud of her identity. And she won't get much time on the news network, to show that she's proud of her Islam. There's so many of those sisters. Actually, a majority of, events are attended by Muslim sisters who are very strong and powerful in their deen. But they won't entertain them. They won't entertain them on the TV shows, things like that. Rather, they'll bring, one or two cases, this woman, she was abused, XYZ. And basically these are some of these caricatures. And unfortunately, usage of caricatures to, make people to agree to things on an emotional basis, not on an intellectual basis. This is one of the key issues. So we need to definitely let, the Muslim women, the sisters know, that they have as much right to look into the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet and read it, understand it, but, we cannot have these, rereadings, the feminist reading of the Quran. These are things which, have no philosophical basis, and fundamentally wrong.
Yeah, and feminism is like, it's an extension of individualism, right? And also, as I mentioned, the Prime Minister was talking about Gladstone from 1894, actually whole idea of it's called Gladstonian liberalism emerged, right? It's actually called Gladstonian liberalism when they were colonizing and kind of secularizing the Muslim world.